Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the 19th edition and 10th anniversary of Talk20 Hutch. I'm Carrie Mayu, and alongside my partners Jackson Swear, Ryan Deal, and Greg Walmsley, and the fabulous staff of the Hutchinson Public Library, thank you all for being here. Tonight we celebrate the 10th anniversary of Talk20 Hutch, as I said, 10 years of showing up for each other in January and July, which, as I've been preparing for this, it's kind of felt surreal. Like, how can 10 years have gone so fast? So indulge me in doing some reflection on the last 10 years before we get started. I've told this story a few times before, but I think it bears repeating tonight. Talk20 Hutch was born over a cup of coffee at Metro in the summer of 2013. I had just moved back to Hutchinson, and I was full of ideas following my time working for a literary and arts nonprofit in Spartanburg, South Carolina. I began reaching out to make connections and pour out my ideas for the community, wondering how I might be useful back in my hometown. I wanted to feel like I belonged, and I needed to find my place. I had a sense that others needed that too. The connection started at Bluebird Books, with each person suggesting I reach out to another person, and it didn't take long before it was obvious I needed to meet Patsy Terrell. I heard that she was known for building community, telling stories, and trying new things. I remember that first conversation with Patsy at Metro so well because it was basically me spilling out my ideas one after the other and hoping that something would land and catch her attention. She clearly lit up over the concept of Talk20. We can do that, she'd said. She said we could talk to Greg Walmsley at the Hutchinson Public Library and that he'd probably be interested because he's open to new things and experimentation. And not long after, we sat down in Greg's office, and I can still remember him saying, "Sure, let's try it." That's the first lesson that Talk20 taught me. Share your ideas. Let people help you make them happen. Give people the chance to light up and say yes. We got to work asking friends and interesting people if they would be willing to try out this new format and concept for a storytelling event. And on the day of the first event, January 24th, 2014, we set up about 80 chairs upstairs in the auditorium, thinking that each of the 10 presenters would bring a few friends and family members. But by 7 o'clock that night, the chairs were full and the standing room was full as well. People were sitting cross-legged on the floor and listening from the hallway. Everything aligned that night. The location, the presenters, the format, the spark, and the room overflowed with people eager to connect, just as Patsy and I were eager to share our love of connection with them. So we do this each time. We kind of see who's in the room. If you were here that night 10 years ago, would you stand so you can see? Aw. Yay. Thank you, guys. Thanks for still coming back all these years later. We felt the community's hunger for connection that night, and Talk20 has been trying to satisfy it ever since. 19 times now, we've invited 10 people to share their stories with their friends, neighbors, and strangers in the community's largest living room at the library. So much life has been lived and lost in the last decade. Let's start with the loss. For nearly 4 years, Patsy and I each had our roles and our particular pieces of the planning. We had a rhythm. We both knew the other's love and dedication to the process and the event, as well as the library's commitment to it. And we intended to keep going and going and going until people didn't want it anymore. But we lost Patsy without warning on June 7th, 2017, after a long night she spent fighting in the Kansas State House. We've lost presenters too. Lloyd Armstrong, Bob Helfrich, and many former presenters have moved on from Reno County, following jobs, family, or new dreams to cities and states beyond, but no one's stories are forgotten. Others we've watched grow up over the years. Dave Sotelo was a student at Hutch High when he presented at the first event on Hutch in the Act back in 2014, and now he is the Human Relations Officer for the city. Christopher Wietrick's Smallville was in its infancy when he shared its origin story at the second edition, and now it has evolved into a summer tradition and a welcomed alternate identity for the city. And Stephen Peterman's Salt City Brewing was still transitioning from brewing out of his garage to commercial production when he presented at the 7th edition, and the brewery was not yet a community gathering place. In the last decade, We've captured oral stories and biographies of local legends, Chester I. Lewis, Daryl Pope, and Rusty Hilst. We've celebrated stories of people overcoming adversity and taking their lives back, like Floyd Bledsoe, Michael Hill Jr., and Seth Dewey. We've heard stories of resilience and vulnerability, like Sarah Reed, Coral Renee, and Mark Nicely. People saying, look at me, hear me, see me for who I am. We've been inspired by stories on the power of connection, Darla Fisher's Dreams for Our Children, Maren Burblinger's Ulster Project, and Lance, Lori, Donna, and Denise on the power of sitting down over a cup of coffee to explore what's possible together, which I think I also proved. We've been introduced to people's passions and interesting collections, Ann Richardson's autographed handkerchiefs, Todd Ray's tattoos, and Dan McCarran's skulls. Many animals have been the subject of stories, including Stacey Hornbeck's canine canvas, Christina Green's chickens, and our one non-human presenter who remembers Paco Bell the parrot. Yeah. And we've learned about the stories of our local loved places, Kirk Johnson's R&B Drive-In, Pam and Buck Lyle's College Grove neighborhood, and Chris Terrell's Gathering Place in Partridge. So if you are one of those previous 179 presenters at Talk20 Hutch, would you please stand? Yeah. So thank you all again for sharing your stories. We know it's not easy getting up here, having had no rehearsal and having no control over the pace of the slides. So we're grateful so many of you have taken on this challenge in the spirit of connection. So in 2019, I asked my friends Ryan Deal and Jackson Swearer to partner with me, two of the most thoughtful and curious people I know. And we picked up where Patsy and I left off, each with our roles that happened mostly in the background until the frenzy of the month before each event. People have asked us along the way why we don't move to a bigger location like the Fox, with a theater and a stage are not the purpose of this event. Like I said earlier, the experience we want to create is being in the community's living room and watching your friends' slideshows. And what better place for that than the public library? COVID-19 did force us to pivot to virtual for several editions and even forced us to cancel 2 events, but we have persisted and you all keep coming back. So thank you to everyone who has helped along the way. Greg Holmes, who recorded the first 7 editions and would stay up like most of the night afterward to get them all posted on YouTube like by the next morning. Tommy Hornbeck and Zach Klobes, who are with Heartland Credit Union, provided a second screen, which you can still see the screen, but we don't really need the projector right now. So thank you guys for helping bring that visibility to our room. Now thank you to Christopher Acker with Salt City Sound, who's making the live stream happen. My coworkers at Hutchinson Community Foundation let me borrow the projector and my laptop, and so that's a helpful behind the scenes thing. Of course, my family, who my husband Philip, my daughter Paige, who was born in the midst of this decade, my mother-in-law Kathy. Thank you always for supporting me in this project. And then of course Lucas Singleton, who's recording things right there behind that column, and all of the staff of the Hutchinson Public Library. They do all the work to set up this space. They move out all the computers, they set up all the chairs, they take it all down. They just make it happen. So can we give a round of applause to the whole Hutchinson Public Library? Okay. Patsy wrote on Facebook in July 2015, Talk20 is an example of what can be done when ideas and people connect, but it has to start somewhere. If Carrie and I hadn't both been open to meeting someone new at the suggestion of a mutual friend, this wouldn't have come to be. And if we hadn't taken action beyond that, it would have just been a nice chat over coffee. You have ideas and people that need connection too. They're waiting for you to build those bridges. So before I move on to the traditional opening for Talk20, we want to do a couple of other recognitions. So please stand if this is your very first Talk20 Hutch. Yay, welcome. And I don't know if there's anyone left in the room at this point who has been here all 19, but if you have 100% attendance, Oh, well, Greg, of course, Greg, way up there. You win. It's okay. There's no grade here. So Greg he's the only one who gets an A+. That's okay. It's okay. All right. And if you're watching tonight from Facebook or YouTube, please say hello in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. That's a new thing we've added since kind of coming out of the COVID time where we've kept the live stream. So we're so excited you all are here to experience our 10 presenters tonight. Here's how we talk about Talk20. Talk20 is not a lecture, but a gathering, an informal exchange of stories and ideas. Talk20 is an experience, a night you should expect the unexpected. Talk20 is not exclusive, but inclusive. It runs on the idea that everyone has a story to tell. Talk20 is curiosity, open minds, humor, heartbreak, education. Talk20 is what we make it. Tonight, you're going to hear a little bit of everything. Each of our 10 presenters will have 20 slides and only 20 seconds per slide to tell a story. We'll have a brief 10-minute intermission after the first 5. And then at the end of the event, if you are still craving connection, we hope you will join us at Sandhills Brewing for a casual connection afterward. Because Talk20 doesn't end with the 10th presenter. It continues through the connections we make, the conversations we have, and the moments months from now when we recall a talk, an image, or a storyteller that stayed with us. So let's get started. Here's Jackson to introduce our first presenter.
Caravan's former landlord didn't like her chalk art in the driveway of her rental, and she shared the disturbing conversation on TikTok. The post went viral, with over 30 million views. Encouraged by the community's support to stand her ground against the bullying, she started the Chalk the Town event to raise awareness and make a positive from the negative. She has had so many opportunities, continued creating chalk videos for viewers, and even collaborated with large brands and companies. Here's Kara with her viral chalk art journey.
Hi, I'm Kara Vaughn. I'm a middle school art teacher, content creator, and I'm an artist. Today I will share my viral chalk story, and as Picasso said, others have seen what is and have asked why. I have seen what could be and asked why not. In May last year, I took my students outside for a chalk art project. We used the technique of using sidewalk chalk, water, and pastels. This technique allows the artist to achieve a vibrant drawing with advanced shading. My students absolutely love this project. And I wanted to advance the techniques for my students, so I started to practice in the driveway of my rental. My landlord had been driving by at the time and stopped to question me, which is very understandable because it did look like I was painting on the sidewalk or in the driveway, and stopped to question me, but I explained that it was just chalk and that it would wash away. And I encouraged him to come by the next day when it was finished. And I was recording my art process and I wanted to upload it to TikTok. And then the next day when he had come over, he brought his wife. And I was excited until she told me that what I was doing was disrespectful. And I explained I wasn't trying to be disrespectful and that I would wash it away. But then she went on to belittle me and gaslight me. And then people started requesting the drawings from the video that I posted. So I posted an update video of me washing it away and explaining the conversation that I just had with my landlord's wife. And that video started to go viral, and people were encouraging me to get a copy of my lease, which I had never been given, and to check with the city to see if it was okay if I draw on the sidewalk instead of the driveway. So I had texted her asking for a copy of my lease, and she called me. I recorded our conversation this time and posted it to TikTok, but I wanted to keep them anonymous. But once people were able to hear how she was treating me, everyone was baffled. She mentioned not seeing any chalk art through town or on sidewalks or driveways, but that had inspired me to make a positive of the situation and get the community together for a Chalk the Town event. So that video now has over 35 million views. So I started to get a lot of attention and recognition from media. I had interviews with Hutch News and even KSN and Cake News where I talked about my plans for Chalk the Town. Once it was published, the local community was in shock for not knowing that the TikTok they had seen of this chalk girl was actually happening in their own town. Now, planning a city event last minute was not easy at all. It was a very short notice for everyone that was involved, but I did meet with a group of city planners and officials to help me get the permits, to help plan and organize the event, and I'm so grateful for that team and all their efforts in making Chalk the Town a huge success. So Chalk the Town, it was a 2-day event. So we had a community mural kickoff in the George Pyle Park. And then on day 2, we had a scavenger hunt in Cary Park. And thanks to several community donations and local sponsors, we were able to provide everyone with chalk and super awesome prizes. And Nick Hempel was actually able to capture a really nice drone shot of the community mural that does say Chalk the Town right there. I had gone out the day before and outlined all the letters and everything, and people were invited that next day to come and color it in and create little artworks on all the little sidewalks surrounding it as well. And so the sidewalks are completely covered in amazing illustrations from everyone that came out that day. And then in Cary Park, we held the scavenger hunt, and people got to check in to get their passport, their little passport that they had, and got to go to different stops to collect stamps on their passport for chances to win prizes. And it was really heartwarming to see many families out having fun. This one was actually from a student of mine that had come to the event too, to show support. And so Cary Park had been flooded with positivity and love in the form of chalk art, and I'm beyond grateful for the way that the community had come together to support the positive message. Over 500 people came to the event, and many from other states, mostly in the Midwest. And so if it wasn't for the support from the community, I would not have stood up for myself. I was supported everywhere I went. I remember I had just ordered glasses at the beginning of May, and then by the time I had uploaded the video and it gone viral, the whole staff at my eye doctor had seen the video and they gave me a box of chalk with my glasses. I thought that was the cutest thing ever. Very thoughtful. But I kept making chalk art the whole summer and posting it to my TikTok. And it was such a fun hobby for me to stumble upon, and I like that I now have a platform to keep sharing my art and positivity. I went from almost 300 followers at the end of May to over 400,000 by mid-June. And that first one's my favorite, of the pickle ricks in a jar, if you know that show. But I've gotten to work with a lot of really fun companies and made videos for them. This one I did for Adult Swim for their Cartoon Network series Checkered Past that features their classics. I've also done collaborations with Tootsie Roll, the Chiefs, Orlando Magic, and more. And so this one was a bit of a stretch, but I tried reaching out to YouTuber Mr. Beast to spread word about Chalk the World, where I was, inviting anyone to come, participate globally and spreading positivity in their community. I didn't have any luck, but people did encourage me to reach out to ZHC. Now, I didn't bother, but I did make his logo for fun. He is also a very popular YouTuber, but in the art world. He followed me back on TikTok actually, and then invited me to be a contestant on his ZHC Crafts channel. And so I got to fly out to their studio in Texas and be part of their metal craft challenge, where we had to make art out of metal. It was 5 of us competing against each other to make the coolest thing out of metal. But it was a really fun time and a great learning experience since I'm starting to dive into the content creator world. And this is not the end of the road for me. I have a lot of great things planned for the future to further benefit the community, and I hope to see you at the next Chalk the Town. Thank you for supporting me and hearing my story.
Growing up, Hillary Berrigan felt so different from her peers. As an adult, getting her diagnosis for borderline personality disorder has led to understanding and self-compassion. This is her story of how she found healing and hope right here in our community. Please welcome Hillary with BPD and me.
In November of 2020, I realized that my life had gone to hell, and not because of the pandemic. I had, over the course of about 3 years, become a person I didn't recognize. I had no sense of who I was. I would be depressed and bedridden, leave jobs, feel incited to rage by everyday occurrences, and start fights with others. I often felt empty to the point of physical pain. My views of myself and others was distorted. All of this made having relationships with people hard, especially my own spouse, who saw me through it all. She bared the weight of my illness every day, like I did. After some particularly hard fights, in a desperate attempt to stop her from leaving, I took half a bottle of Klonopin in hopes something would change. Sorry. I lost my ability to choose what happened next, and for that I'm grateful. I would also like to apologize for what I said to the nurse that day. Never kill the messenger. Once on the psych unit, I had time to process. I felt full of anger and pain, fear, and exhaustion. I couldn't understand what was happening. Throughout my early adulthood, I worked through so much of the trauma I had faced in my life. I came to the realization that my trauma hadn't ended with my childhood. It had still been happening, and that choosing to disconnect with most of my family is traumatic, even if it's for the best. So after my 72 hours, I met with my med prescriber, and I told her that I did not feel my medications were working, no matter how many I tried. I was feeling hopeless. She asked me a series of 9 questions. After emphatically stating yes to each one, she asked me if I was familiar with borderline personality disorder. And I was. Like they say, I got it from my mama. So my journey began anew. The therapist I had been seeing informed me that a group for dialectical behavioral therapy was starting in a few months. DBT was designed to treat BPD, and after some research, I was sold. What I feel helped me accept my diagnosis is that I acknowledged how miserable I was, and that I was willing to do what it takes. Seeing how much pain I had caused my loved ones, I knew I needed to face this head on, especially on the hard days. Once I started group, I found a sense of community and belonging I'd never known before. People whose minds worked like mine, and for the first time in a long time, I felt understood. DBT taught me how to accept myself and live a life with my BPD instead of in survival mode. I was taught how to cope with stress, disappointment, dissociation, and fear, and I have a lot of fears. Along the way, I learned how to start forgiving myself and understand myself as who I am today. I also learned the importance of a strong support system. I've heard from others who also live with BPD that they hide their diagnosis because of the stigma. I know I have, but support through this process is imperative. It really takes a village. I needed people around that cared and could give me boundaries when I didn't know how. My amazing wife, who was always encouraging and challenging me. My boss at the time, who was empathetic and allowed me to have bad days without judgment, who's here tonight. My siblings and friends, who were there to love me and listen to me cry when it became overwhelming to my wife. My group, who listened, shared, and held space for each other. And most but not least, my wonderful therapists at Horizons, who have taught me so much and made time for me. I appreciate them so much. that I've started recommending them to others. I'm waiting to see if I'll start receiving gift baskets or threats at this point. Sorry, I'm moving a little fast. I graduated from group last November, and I would love to stand here and say I am now the epitome of mental stability, but that's not the way it works. Every day consists of continuing to do the work and maintain. The time and effort are worth it. I am worth it. I've been struggling with writing the 6-minute talk for 3 months because I have another personality in my head who I've named Martha, and she didn't like the idea of this very much. I've been filled with imposter syndrome and self-doubt. The question of, am I healed enough? Am I healed enough to talk about this? Well, here I am. All of this is to say that there's hope. There's hope in treating BPD and mental health. And sometimes it's right in your own backyard. Thank you.
Memorial Hall has been used for assembly and entertainment in Hutchinson since 1911. Jesse Garcia Juma believes its use by the community is needed now more than ever, and it's time to bring this building to its fullest. Here's Jesse with More Than Just a Hall.
Either going to choke and forget everything or have a flood and have too much to say. But anyway, yes. So this is a convention hall. A definition for a convention can be a large meeting place for people with a common interest. This building is built as a performing arts center because it has a stage inside, and literally people from all over the world have come to play here. When the cornerstone was set on this building, it may have been the first time a sitting president performed such a ceremony in Kansas. And this photo shows the 27th president of the United States, William Howard Taft, who actually, that photo's at the fair, but he also took time to come down and lay the cornerstone on the building when they were building it. Back to the stage, many national artists, international artists have played here, from Russian ballets to Kenny Chesney. The same company that brought Kenny Chesney in wanted to do Willie Nelson, but the city council wouldn't allow it because Willie wanted to sell his own whiskey at that time. And of course, this is Tina Turner, and that was Ike behind her. We don't like Ike. It's actually a glorious building. There's not really another room like this, 2,000 capacity in Kansas. It's structurally sound. There's actually a downtown revitalization study going on along with Memorial Hall. And this building could be like the heartbeat of downtown Hutchinson. View from the stage, it's a versatile room. You can see it has an open floor. Many activities can happen here. Artists have told me they love the sound of this room and they like the interactive with the city. The seats open so you can dance on the floor or dance in your seats. This is a view from the seats. You can see it has a proscenium stage. The line sites are all great seats you can see from everywhere. I'd like to put 2 LED screens on those walls right next to the stage so that you can see, usually for marketing purposes and also for shots of the bands when they're performing on the stage. This was a meeting that happened this is a police Q&A for the public. You can imagine how many meetings have taken place there in the last 112 years. The venue is also known for a default if there's bad weather going on with some other activity, that they would bring it into the hall. And so I don't know if this was actually set up like this or if this was because of a rain outside, so they had to bring the stuff back in, but it's kind of ambitious to put all those in there. Another thing that always happens, I think you're all familiar with Santa Claus on the stage, and this is the gingerbread thing that Hutch Rec does, and just one of the things with common interest that people share, and one of the uses of the hall. So as you know, it's not just for concerts and stuff, but it's a community building, and that's the keyword, community. I've seen a lot of weddings actually in just even the last 2 years, and it's really a romantic setting. When they bring the lights down and the ceilings with the lights on side, it looks like stars and stuff. But I've seen a lot of good wedding. I mean, it's really a nice wedding venue also too. Sporting events have happened in this room. From with the ring, you could do wrestling, boxing. Actually, the JUCO tournaments actually started here. I've heard donkey basketball, with I yet to see a picture yet, but also seen the stage used like that in the center for a wedding one time too, which is really pretty cool. The family community theater or children's theater, I can't remember what it is, but they used a room too periodically. If we had air conditioning in the place, they probably use it more, and others. That's Annie, but next month they're doing Oliver, yeah, so make sure you catch that. There's not a shortage of musicians in Hutch, and we could put a lot of local and regional artists on the stage and use Memorial Hall. That's the hardest working man in showbiz, that sax player back there in the corner. But yeah, so I'd like to see the venue used also for regional stuff and local. This was a band called Beginnings. They're a Chicago cover band that played as part of the community concert series, and asked me about that afterwards, because it's a concert series that's been happening at Memorial Hall probably since they built it. And but they have many shows. It's the best ticket in town and the best price. You know this band, ZZ Top. Actually, ZZ Top, Flag and Molly, Air Supply, Mr. Big, Elvis Costello, Milk Carton Kids, Three Dog Nights, Grace Potter, Band of Horses, Clint Black, Kenny Wayne Shepherd, Godsmack, John Baptiste, Tesla, Casey and the Sunshine Band, Extreme, Lettucey, Blue October, Black Crows, Black Pumas, Casting Crows. This lady is LaVey. Asked me about her because she's a sharp new artist. Jody Messina, Sum 41, Todd Rungan. All these artists are playing this year on tour, and they're playing 2,000 capacity rooms. So that's potential artists that we could get to Hutchinson. This is the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville. And Nashville's, known for the music city. But I think and it's the same capacity as Memorial Hall. I see Memorial Hall as our Ryman Auditorium. Why Hutchinson? Because anybody knows marketing, Hutchinson's in the center of within an hour of all these cities, which still includes Salina and Wichita. And, within that circle, an hour drive is 600,000 people plus, so that's our market, but that's why we should be able to sell a ticket. I've talked to some national promoters, and they're interested in Hutch because when they're looking for an artist that they're trying to promote, and just based on their ticket sales, we have a 1,000 capacity Fox, we have the 2,000 Memorial Hall, we have the 5,000 Sports Arena, and we have a 10,000 shed at the State Fair, which they're planning on doing shows all year round. So that's why we need to put air conditioning in Memorial Hall and revitalize this building. And we will rename it, because you need a cool name for a venue when the concert comes, so you can play the Taft.
XP League Northwest Wichita brings competitive esports to the youth of Central Kansas. Cody and Becca Rupke focus on teamwork and helping mold coachable attitudes in youth. They strive to create a safe place for your kids to do the thing they love. Please welcome Cody and Becca with Esports in Kansas.
Hey everyone, I'm Cody Rupke and this is my wife Becca. Behind us you can see our two kids, Tristan and Ronnie, who are super involved with the business. Becca and I were both born and raised here in Hutch. We love our community and wanted to provide something for the kids to enjoy.
Last May, we opened an XP League division here in Hutchinson. XP League is an in-person, coach-led youth esports league. Players compete against teams from across the country, exposing them to unique competition and enrichment opportunities. Our values are to be a safe, fun, and educational environment that builds up young gamers, teaching them positive communication skills, strategic thinking, and teamwork.
We are the Bearded Dragons. We had the option of picking a pre-made mascot, but since Kansas has a support the local team mentality, we decided to create our own. Our son Tristan is the mastermind behind the dragon. Him and I were talking in the truck one day, and this was our end result. Tristan says it represents good luck and a warrior's mentality.
Our Fortnite and Apex teams compete in a Battle Royale format over an 8-week season. We have 3 Fortnite teams. These are all, my slides out of order. These are all of our Fortnite players and their coach. I think it's next, Tracy. The first thing players do when they join the league is compete individual skills and personality assessment to place them on teams, matching them up with players of similar skill level and playing style. Even though we've only been competing for 2 full seasons, we have seen players learn to resolve conflict, deal with disappointment, and play to their strengths. A couple weeks ago, Tristan was one of 4 players left in a 60-player battle royale, and his team started to root him on. Pretty shortly, all of the teams gathered up cheering him on, jumping up and down as he pulled some skilled moves. The energy was totally electric and rivaled any basketball game I've been to.
Next, we have the 5v5 objective games, Valorant and Overwatch. Everyone has a different role to play, like healers, damage dealers, and tanks. The game features modes like capture the point and push the payload. These games are the most strategic of the ones we offer and take a very cohesive team to be successful. Then we have Rocket League. It's the simplest game to understand and the hardest to master. It's teams of 3 and it's soccer with cars that can fly and also flip. It has an insanely high skill cap and take years to rise to the ranks and be successful.
One question that we frequently hear is, how can Minecraft be competitive? Minecraft Bed Wars takes more strategy than most games you can think of. The matches are teams of 4 protecting their bed while also trying to destroy the other team's bed, like capture the flag. Rounds last close to half an hour, and you use that time farming the right resources for the strongest final push.
Third Thursday was our first grassroots marketing attempt. We had a crazy booth ready to go with an 8x10 backdrop and all these pretty signs, but the weather had other plans. This is our first chance to introduce the concept to the community, and we met some awesome friends and players at the event, some that we still see every week. After that, we had Smallville Comic-Con. This was our first and only year to be a vendor, as opposed to a visitor. We talked to families for hours on end. We had the computers set up, and I challenged kids to the shooting range and gave away prizes to anyone that could beat me.
We have an absolutely fantastic team of coaches at our division. Our coaches have strong game knowledge, but more importantly, they have excellent experience working with kids. During practice and matches, they engage with the players on their level, bringing the kids out of their shells and modeling positive communication. All of our coaches completed a next level coaching certificate, a pro-level esports coaching program. Our first live coaching event was an open house upstairs in the library conference room. We set up all of our computers, tested different formats, made sure all the games and software worked, and scheduled skills assessments for 3 hours. Each player met with a coach to go through some preliminary drills and get to know each other. We actually had to add a 4th time slot on the fly since we had so many walk-ins during the event.
These are pictures of our kids helping decorate the building for our grand opening. Since we're a mobile concept, we thought the fairgrounds would be a great place to host the event. We planned and marketed the event for over a month, trying to make everything perfect. And the night before the grand opening, we only had 2 skill assessments scheduled. We were extremely worried it'd be a bust. While inside waiting for the grand opening to start, we began seeing cars roll in. We had a fun-filled day with Chunky Chet's cookies and Salt City Chiller snow cones for everyone. We set up 12 stations, and all 12 seats were full the entire time. We had a positive impacts of esports panel with some awesome guests and also gave away some fantastic prizes.
Most of our gamers come in the door looking for a competitive edge, just like most club sports. Typically, they tell us they are the best player that they know. Then, in the first couple of matches, we always hear, these lobbies are so sweaty, like super competitive. However, we have never had a player quit on us because XP League is too tough. All of our kids have taken these sweaty lobbies as a challenge and absolutely lived up to it.
During the off season between fall and winter split, we had to get a little creative with our downtime. We threw a pizza party with HCC esports team where the kids had a Smash tournament with the college players. After that, we ran Drop with a Cop. Fortnite and Apex kids came in on Saturday to 4 of HPD's finest. They were seriously outplayed by our kids, but had a great time anyway. Then HCC's Rocket League team came to mentor our kids for a night. We spent 2 hours scrimmaging and mixing teams with the college players, and at the end, they let the kids ask questions about making improvements to their gameplay and how to be a more cohesive team.
In October, Cody and I attended the Unleashed Brands Conference where we spent a week immersed in business, esports, and personal development training. Even better, we networked with some other league owners and discussed best practices and brainstormed new ideas. These other owners have become our friends over chat and through shared matches. But in October, we got to play some real-life video games with these virtual friends, very much like our XP League players in our center. The conference also celebrated success, like the premier martial arts franchisees of the year, who operate on Tyler Road in Wichita. Other Unleashed Brands owners in Wichita, from PMA and Urban Air, have been very generous advisors and mentors, especially in some of our new endeavors.
We are currently working out the details of opening our second location in Wichita, where we plan to build out an arena on Maze Road. And this summer, we hope to take some kids to North American Finals, XP League's ultimate destination. It's a pro-level esports event at Full Sail University where the top teams in the nation compete to take home the trophy. Good.
Get ready to join Sandra Milburn on her journey through the past as she highlights some of her most memorable photographs from 33 years as a photojournalist at the Hutchinson News. Share in her joy, sorrow, and laughter as she talks about the stories behind her historic images of the people and places in Kansas. Please welcome Sandra with 33 years of perfect picture memories.
This first image illustrates what I felt like when Jackson asked me to talk in front of all you. Bug-eyed and scared to death. This photo was taken at the Big Slide at the Kansas State Fair, which is always a surefire place for great photos. And while at the News, I worked 32 state fairs. I missed only one when our daughter was born in September of 2005. I won the 2007 Kansas AP Photo of the Year award for this aerial photo of Greensburg the day after the EF5 tornado tore through the town. Thank goodness the grain elevator was there. It was the only landmark I could see to determine where I was taking pictures. I rode in a very small plane, way before drones were a common occurrence. One of our favorite yearly harvest stories was about neighbors helping neighbors, and this family in Holcomb received help during corn harvest. The daughter of the sick farmer was on the plane getting a bird's eye view of the combines and grain carts, and it's not every day you get to put combines and an airplane in one photo. Of course, no one can forget the gas fires in Hutch. I heard a big explosion and ran out of the news building toward the plume of smoke. I got to Decorah long before the building collapsed, even before the firefighters had the hoses pulled out and filled with water. It just came down so quickly. This photo is a demonstration flight at Hutch Airport showing Tanker 95 unloading gallons of water like they would during a wildfire. And I love the look and shape of this water as it drops out of the plane. Photojournalism was a fantastic career where I got to be behind the scenes, learn new things, and interact with new people at every assignment. Sometimes in photography, you are just lucky. And this photo is just that, luck. I left Prairie Hills Middle School, and I saw a deer run across 30th, and of course I followed him. They stopped near the back of a home, and the homeowner drove by me, but he didn't seem to mind when he saw the deer and he saw my lens sticking out of the car window. And I loved the breath was cool. I thought this photo was cool because of the evening light on the corn, which resembles a rainbow. And how often do you get to see a tractor driving on top of a pile of corn, right? The reason for the corn is that they were making high moisture corn silage at a feed yard north of Turon. Dog Day at the Splash was a favorite assignment of mine. Photographing animals is always a challenge, but fun when they get to play in the water. It took a couple of attempts to get just the right frame as they shook. But when you look at the photo, you know what you're seeing. It's hard for your mind to grasp the weirdness of the image. I was so excited when I saw this photo on the back of my camera. Look at the eyeglasses on the bottom right side of the photo that flew off his head when the basketball hit him in the face. I remember showing everybody in sight, look, I got this photo. And then I told the gals in the bathroom later, you won't believe the photo I just took. So I like that one. This is one frame of a series of frames of a McPherson soccer player who threw the ball into the game by doing a front flip. It was awesome. The lighting was just perfect on her face when she was upside down. And some of my favorite sports photos are ones that are unexpected and unique, not a normal soccer photo with two players hitting the ball, you know. I've taken a lot of rodeo photos through the years, but an outdoor rodeo with sunlight is a dream assignment for a photographer. Look how straight up and down the bull is. The bull rider is actually nearly lying down flat on his back, but it seems to be sitting up and down. This is when the state fair had rodeos in front of the grandstand a long time ago. Photographing wheat harvest year after year can start to look the same. I changed it up by taking a long lens out into a field at sunset. I found the stalk of wheat sticking up above the others, and then centered the sun behind it. It sounds easy, but it took a few tries to get the best shot. It's one of my favorite silhouettes of all time. I had to wait for this train carrying wind turbine blades to come through the town of Pleasant View for almost an hour. I waited. Patience is a must for photography. I used a long lens and waited on the side of the highway on top of an overpass for just the right moment. My first thought when I look at this photo is that it looks like a toy train. Reno County firefighters pushed burning remains of 30 round hay bales into the ditch along Sterling Road south of Highway 50. An ember from a nearby grass fire ignited the bales on the trailer. But this photo is so out of the ordinary. I just love the firefighters framed by the trailer and how the hay looks like lava coming off of a volcano. I didn't realize how cool raindrops looked on a spider web until I found this one day when I was looking for wild art for the front page of the paper. I was amazed at how the web pattern was perfectly outlined with the pearls of water on them. And I don't think the spider moved a muscle the whole time I was there. At least I don't remember. This is a photo of the tornado that struck Willowbrook in 1991. You'll see two red lights, and those are the brake lights of a law enforcement vehicle that passed us. And although this photo did not run in the Hutch News for many, many years, another photographer got back and made it and made Deadline, so they didn't use my photo. It did run in Life magazine, so that was okay. For years, I photographed this barn north of Cunningham on my way to and from work. I was extremely thrilled when it snowed a ton and covered everything in sight. I finally got what I thought was the absolute best photo, a red barn surrounded by white snow. I liked it. Being at the right place at the right time is paramount to getting the ultimate bullfighting photo. That was my hope during the Pretty Prairie Rodeo when I saw them get ready for this trick. Bullfighter Jacob Welker jumped over the bull as Wacy Munsell distracted the animal, and if you look closely, inside the barrel is rodeo clown John Harrison. Early in my career at the news, my editor made me look for wild art, and he said I couldn't come back until I found something for page 1. And because it was slides, not digital, I had no idea what I'd taken until I processed the film. I was so excited when I came back and looked at the slide that the face on the book landed perfectly at the right angle to make it look like it was the baby's real face. I'm ending with this funny photo. We're doing a story about purple martins, and I can hear the bird say, "What are you looking at?" I love my years as a photojournalist, and I worked with a great group of people that I still consider my friends. 30 plus years ago, I could not have imagined the decline of newspapers, and journalism as it is today. And I'm glad there's still hardworking journalists sharing photos and stories. Now, paring down 33 years of news photos into 20 was tough. but enjoyable. It was an enjoyable trip down memory lane, and thank you for letting me share with you.
All right, great. Thank you so much to our presenters so far. And it's, as always, it is been a wonderful collection of stories. We have 5 more coming back after intermission. Normally, I would just send you away in honor of the occasion and the 10 years. I just want to briefly say that I enjoy this very much. And as someone who went away and came back and then gave a talk 20 about going away and coming back, I very much love this community, and I'm so grateful that everyone else here loves it too and loves to share in these stories. So now go away and come back for intermission.
Welcome back to the second half of Talk 20. 10 years. I still remember the very first one. In typical Ryan Deal fashion, I showed up right before the event was going to happen with plans to just kind of sneak in the very back and be part of the standing room, to find the standing room was completely full. So I was one of the quite a few that were in the hallway with our ears like right next to the door, kind of listening to every word that any of the presenters said. And then after, in the second half, I ended up being one of the people that Carrie talked about, sitting on the floor. So many memories throughout those years, and so many great talks that we've learned so much about our community. And that's going to continue on with the second half for tonight. John DePue is up next with a brief explanation of how to turn music's rules against it. With patience and practice, he says, you too can write a song that only weirdos and music nerds would want to listen to. Give it up for John and his talk, How to Write a Weird Song.
Okay. A song is just a bunch of notes. The notes can be in the same order or not. There's a truth that key signatures and time signatures are only descriptions of sound. Someone had to hear it in their head. They had to write it in their brain before they wrote it down. It's just how the word for slime is not the slime itself. Don't get worried about theory. Put your worries on the shelf. A song is just a bunch of words. Sometimes they make a lot of sense. Sometimes they make no sense at all. Have you heard about the sofa, monkey, potato, flying high? Baked bean fever dream in the New York Times. Your inner world is rich and full of meaning, even when nobody else knows what the heck you're singing. Your feelings and the stuff you think, the dishes in your kitchen sink, are piled up in such a way that makes you think of other days way back in college. When we were young, we had the whole world at our doorstep. Now time has flown and the walls are closing in. It's just our habits, old trails through the grasses of our mind. They get deeper over time and then turn into ruts. But the good news is with practice we can step out in the grass. And if the sun is in the right place, we can see that there are tiny strands of spiderweb connecting me to you and you to me. A song is like a filament that stretches across time and space, connecting us to folks before and folks who've not yet lived a day. And often when you're writing songs, the things you cannot say will say themselves to you. They'll say themselves through you. Your burning love, your deep regret, the things you never said to your pet bunny, they're nothing to be fearful of. You just have to keep your head on straight, honey. You need not know a lot of stuff, just sing whatever comes. Some can play guitar or bass, but anyone can play their face. Now it's your turn. Okay, I'm going to show you how to do it. All right. Face, hand. Open your mouth like this. You guys are doing great. The secret to good songwriting is open up your mind and sing.
Nicely done. That is the first. I told you memories are going to be made. Social and emotional character development has gained a lot of attention lately. What is it? And why is it important in our schools? Please welcome Melissa Evans with SECD. What and why?
Before I start, I just want to say super quickly, I hate that this is my first time here. I think I've told some of you that during intermission. I'm sitting here kind of in awe of the fact that this takes place in our community. Really embarrassed that I haven't been here before, but just super proud that this exists here and that you all have been a part of it. So I can't wait for the next one when I can stand up when Carrie says, stand up if you've been here for the second time now. That's my goal. So we'll do our best. And if I bomb, it's only 6 minutes. Okay. Research shows that audiences instantly trust presenters more when there are pictures of brain scans on a slide. I have no idea what these scans are, but it's meant to make you laugh because I've learned that for me, when I'm feeling dysregulated or nervous, making people laugh and making myself laugh helps. So that's what that is. I have no idea what that is, but hopefully you trust what I'm saying. However, it is really important to note that the development of SECD, or what several of you have probably heard referred to as SEL, so social emotional learning, it's not fluff. It's rooted in brain science. There is so much research behind what we're doing in schools to support our kiddos. This is just one example of how different brains work, different parts of your brains work when you are stressed or unstressed. For example, on the right side here, you have when you're unstressed, you're in your prefrontal cortex, which my 12-year-old 7th graders haven't quite fully developed, but we try to keep them there, versus when you're stressed. You're often in your amygdala and your brainstem. A lot of people from trauma sit there in survival mode. Our goal in schools is to develop a common language. Any student in 308, if you were to say voice level 0, they would know immediately that that's to be quiet. We want a common language like that for our students when it comes to their emotions and what they need in interacting. In 308, we use Leader in Me as our social emotional learning curriculum. And really, it just focuses on skills that we need as children, that we need as adults, and it supports their learning. It makes it easier to learn when you can be in the part of your brain that allows you to learn. In Kansas, we focus on preparing students to be college and career ready. This is the college and career competency wheel with 3 key areas: your interpersonal, focused on oneself; your interpersonal, how we work with others; and then cognitive, focused on executive functions like time management, organization, and other skills necessary to complete work. This is an example of something we have in our classrooms, a stress-o-meter, where we ask students just to take a pause and say, where am I right now? Am I ready to learn? Am I stressed out? Do I need to take a break so that I can sit there and participate in what I need to participate in? And I love this. This is from Ferris, where students are working, they are stressed out. This is from my own building. One of my teachers has this taped on his desk for students, and very discreetly he walks by and just asks them to point, where are you right now? Not only does that help the student say, man, you know, I'm a little bit stressed, I need to take a pause, it also helps that teacher know, how can I best serve this student? I put this on there. For me, I like to take a drink of water when I need a pause, when I notice I'm stressed. If I have a student in my office and we need to talk through things, there's science that supports that water helps you regulate yourself, but also just that 3-second pause when I'm taking a swizz and swallow helps me decide how I respond and not react. Interpersonal is how we work with each other. I'm just going to scrap these and talk to you guys. Interpersonal is how we work with each other. There's so many opportunities embedded that in all of our classes. This is a FACS classroom and a PBL classroom where students are working together for cupcake wars and building bridges, but they're learning those communication skills we know they need. In our 7 habits, that Leader in Me curriculum that we have, we call it synergy. When you're working together, when your output, when you're working together, is greater than if your individual efforts were on their own. This is the staff at Ferris working on something that I always just thought was really neat. Your cognitive, so this is your character development. This is those executive function skills that I mentioned. Right here, these 2 boys at Graber, they set a goal, which we call Begin with the End in Mind, and the 7 habits, to read a book from all 50 states. They colored it in. They set their goal, they used their time wisely, and they were able to accomplish it. We talk about work first, then play. We talk about begin with the end in mind. What we really want for our kiddos is to be proactive versus reactive. We want them to take care of what they need to, as opposed to getting behind and then reacting instead of choosing an appropriate response. This would be an example of what happens when we're reactive. This is where I'm hoping you laugh too. Imagine what would happen if those legislators had some SECD standards in their schooling. It's not meant to be political, though. It's not, I promise. I just thought it was funny. I'm guilty of thinking that those are great things, but also prideful in saying my kids will never need that. Those are my babies. And I have learned that really everyone needs to learn that. Sometimes life throws you some curves that require you to be able to regulate yourself. For me, this is an example of when my children are with me and I realize, man, I'm dysregulated and I really want to react right now. Instead, this was an opportunity for us to share a learning opportunity. You take that pause, you take that deep breath, and you say, man, I have people watching me right now. How can I turn this into a learning moment? Oh, it did play. This is my son, Maxwell, demonstrating pretzel breathing he learned at school that he can do when he's feeling stressed. There's science in crossing your midline. There's a reason he has his arms crossed and his legs crossed, and he is taking deep breaths because he was frustrated he didn't get candy at the concession stand at the football game.
SECD standards are not fluff. They have standards just like math. They have standards just like ELA, and they're meant to be skills that are teachable, measurable, essential for academic achievement, and they're to be continuously developed throughout life. I would kill to have learned this in school and not when I failed classes at K-State because I didn't have great time management skills. Just like we don't wait until a student is on fire to teach them to stop, drop, and roll, we shouldn't wait until a student is dysregulated to teach them how to get back into a place in their brain where they can choose their responses. I think this quote is really important because sometimes I think there are people that feel like it is a negative indictment on their own learning, that I did well in school. I don't know why we need to change it, but I'm a big believer in Maya Angelou and do the best you can until you know better. And then when you know better, you need to do better.
Sorry, let's try that again. I really can't right now. Okay. When disaster strikes, emergency management must ensure that all governmental, volunteer, and private agencies are functioning according to plan, have the resources necessary, and are working as a team. By working through the phases of emergency management, the community works together for a common goal. In recent disasters, the community has successfully navigated through dark times using these phases. Please welcome Adam Weishauer with the phases of emergency management.
Little caveat here, this is usually about an hour and a half to 2 hour presentation, so we're going to get through it in 6 minutes. We're going to talk fast, so buckle up and hold on. We're ready. So this is our office logo. I'm the Director of Emergency Management for Reno County. The Emergency Management actually came out of Civil Defense Act in 1950, and then in 1975, the state of Kansas actually mandated emergency managers in all states, or all of Kansas. So the state of Kansas has 106 emergency managers across the state. So next picture here is the phases of emergency management. As you can see, it's a constant revolving cycle. You can jump in anywhere and you can't really exit. So you're always in this cycle. It's preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation. The first one we're going to talk about is going to be preparedness. So preparedness is planning. How are we going to respond to an event and mitigate a disaster? So what I encourage you all to do is come to our Storm Fury on the Plains presentation, February 24th at the Command Fire Training Center. That's a National Weather Service presentation that we do in conjunction with them. And they're going to talk about severe weather and what you can do to better prepare yourself, better prepare your family and homes. My office oversees the rural fire districts in Reno County. So the rural fire districts cover about 1,100 square miles of the county, not including the city of Hutch or South Hutch or Fire District 2. So not only do the fire districts need to be prepared, this is part of our quarterly training where we're giving them the education so they have tools and education to go along with that. This is a picture of the Luke Bryan concert that got dumped on us about the last day that it was going to come. So it's a big muddy field out here. We had to come together with all the responders in the county, Public Works, State Fair Board to figure out how to fit all these people just north off of Plum Street. If you look on the right side of the picture there, you'll see not only some of our Homeland Security assets, but also all of our response vehicles. This one here is a picture of our Mutual Aid Support Tower. That's another Homeland Security asset that helps us be prepared. And it actually goes up in there over 100 feet. So when we lose communications, that thing can roll out. It was actually used in the Barber County wildfires. So again, on preparedness, this was leading up to the Cottonwood Complex fires. Every day we get a briefing packet from the National Weather Service when we're facing some extreme conditions in the county, and all the first responders in the county get together and game plan what is going to happen and how to get the public the best response possible with the resources we have. Then finally, this is a stock picture off the internet. I encourage everyone to have some sort of preparedness kit at home. We forget about water oftentimes with the freeze that just happened. I know there's a lot of people without water. We encourage a gallon of water per person a day. And then we also encourage jump boxes. So jump boxes are great for your vehicle, but you can also plug your cell phone into it. So we're going to get into the response portion of it. So we don't think about flooding all the time, but my time in the office, I've been here about 8 years. We've had 6 federally declared disasters, and 2 of them actually been flooding. So when I say federally declared, we declare a local disaster, and we're responsible for about approximately $280,000 to cover that disaster. And our Board of County Commissioners, Ron Sellers, I saw you somewhere in here. He's gone now, but he actually has been really supportive, and we've done well with flooding. This picture is a picture of all the roads that were closed late in 2019 due to flooding, and that all goes to dispatch. So this is a hay bale fire. This is just an everyday thing, everyday kind of response for our rural fire districts. So this is my opportunity to stand up here and say every rural fire district in Reno County does need help. These people are giving up their time, their talent, their evenings with their families, and really professionals coming out and serving their community. The Highlands Fire, this is from the Highlands Fire. We had over 2,100 people brought into the county to assist with the Highlands Fire. This is a picture of one of our slow times where everyone's coming in. They checked in at the table at the fire training center, and this was just a massive response effort in the county. This is another picture that wasn't mine, but I think it's relevant for the recent storms we just went through. We talk about our responders and we talk about all the great things we're doing all the time. We often overlook our public works people, our utility providers that are spending hundreds of hours away from their family to make sure that the roads are halfway drivable or you have electricity back on your house. This is a picture that actually hits home for me. This is during the Highlands Fire. We are all members of the community. All your responders are members of the community. During the Highlands Fire, my house actually got a little crispy, and it's in this picture. So this is when I saw it, when we're riding a helicopter trying to figure out what was actually on fire. Next one's our CERT team, our community emergency response team. They help with response and recovery for us. That's a volunteer program, and it's actually ran out of my office. We have several members on that team. They'll come out and do check-in. They'll feed our firefighters or responders and do donation management. The VOAD, this is very unique to Reno County, the Volunteer Organizations Active in Disasters, and they're an amazing group of people that walk hand in hand with the victims of all our disasters in the community. Every dollar that's donated to the community is accounted for by this VOAD, and they make sure that all our victims' basic needs are met. I'm fortunate enough to sit on that board, and it's been probably a year and a half to walk through that process with these victims. This photo here is again with recovery. That's Chief Doug Hainan showing Governor Kelly all the houses that were burned in the Cottonwood complex. This isn't Doug's favorite picture. He actually retired today, so if you know Doug, go ahead and send him a text message and let him know it's in my presentation. And then this isn't my picture, but for me, this is my favorite part after wildfire decimates our community. It's our first symbol of hope, the hope that we're going to recover, the hope we're going to build back, be stronger for the next one, but we're still not going to forget where we came from. And then finally, we talk about mitigation all the time. This is a picture from some mitigation burns or some practice mitigation burns that were happening. But the biggest thing we can do as a community is encourage some sort of defendable space for our firefighters when they go out to be able to defend your homes. Mitigation is very, very challenging in our community. And then finally, this is what brings it all home. This is my support system, and this is what allows me to come out and help with the community. That's all I have. Thank you.
Ruth Seliger knows that growing up with a hearing impairment presents some unique challenges, as invisible disabilities are easily overlooked or misunderstood. Sometimes the most difficult part is learning to accept and embrace your own flaws. Please welcome Ruth with Turning Disability into a Superpower.
It's easy to glance around the room or scroll through social media and assume that everyone around you has an easier life or has it all figured out. But many people don't wear their struggles on their sleeves, and many personal challenges are practically invisible to the uninformed eye. Can you see mine? When someone is in a wheelchair, it's understandable that a flight of stairs would be an obstacle for them. But people with hearing loss blend in with the crowd, and it can be harder for others to recognize the situations that they view as obstacles. If you think I look normal, my lifelong fear of phone conversations and fast food drive-thrus probably seems a little irrational, as does the amount of time I've spent avoiding social situations. Let me show you what these obstacles look like from the inside. When I was 2 years old, I got the chicken pox. No big deal, right? Well, they can't be sure, but doctors suspect that a high fever or an ear infection damaged some of the receptor cells in my ears, and permanent hearing loss was the result. I don't like to think of it as a disability, but it did have a significant effect on my childhood development. A simplified version of how hearing works is that when sound hits the eardrum, vibrations move through the fluid-filled canals on the other side. The edges of that canal are lined with receptors, each tuned to a specific frequency. When activated by the sound wave they're listening for, the receptor sends a signal through the nerve to the part of the brain that processes sound. As a kid, going to the dentist didn't bother me, but I absolutely despised going to the audiologist. She was a very nice person, and I got to know her well enough that she later wrote some of my letters of recommendation for college scholarship applications. But the visits were torture because it felt like taking a test that no amount of studying could ever give me the right answers for. If you've ever had a hearing test, they put you in a soundproof room just big enough for a chair and give you a button to push when you hear different tones played louder or softer to detect the limits of what you can hear. After a while, the beep starts ringing in your ears and you can't tell if it's real or if you're imagining it. Hearing loss isn't always the same across the board. Since different receptors have different frequencies that they detect, it's possible to hear some sounds at a normal level and then not be able to hear others at all, depending on which receptors are damaged. Most of my loss is in the higher frequencies, so I can hear deep noises really well, like cats purring or concerts on the other side of town, but human speech usually falls in the middle to upper frequencies where I have more trouble. I got my first pair of hearing aids at age 9. Precision of technology has improved a lot in recent years, and aids can now be programmed to selectively magnify different frequencies for your loss. But when I was a kid, sound was amplified much more generally. Especially with human speech, making it louder doesn't always make it more understandable. If someone speaks in a mumble and you add a microphone, it still sounds like gibberish, just louder. If you think about how many words in the English language sound almost the same if you remove a single letter, there's a lot of room for misinterpretation if one part of the word isn't clearly distinguishable. And when you add multiple ambiguities, it just gets confusing really fast. Listening to conversations became kind of like doing a Sudoku. You get some of the pieces, but not all of the puzzle, and you have to fill in the blanks from context. I'm pretty good at logic puzzles, but using that as a strategy for conversations will kill your response time. By the time you figure out what they said and formulate a response, the topic is long gone. Body language and lip movements can be very helpful bits of information. They add context clues that can help clarify or narrow down missing pieces of the verbal message. Take these clues away, and phone conversations, drive-through ordering, and just understanding people talking away from you can be much more challenging and anxiety-provoking with hearing deficiencies. One day I was scrolling through videos on my phone with the sound muted, and I saw a guy talking with a British accent. And that's absurd, I told myself. It's silent. You can't possibly tell if he has an accent. But sure enough, I turned the sound off. British. Apparently, I spend more time than I thought reading lips for extra reassurance. My family was very understanding and supportive of me, but kids can be less accepting of differences in others, and I struggled to make friends. I often felt like an outsider, never truly accepted. When I would respond to what I thought was said and got weird looks, I would become more reserved in social situations to avoid getting laughed at. Much later in life, I learned that some people who didn't know me well at all thought I was stuck up because I wasn't as talkative or as interactive as the other kids. Let me just set that record straight. Not talking to people because you're afraid of mishearing them and saying something that might make you get you made fun of is not the same thing as thinking you're better. It wasn't until just a few years ago that I discovered a book that told a story very similar to my own childhood. Elle Defoe, written and illustrated by Cece Bell, depicts her childhood hearing loss and the academic and social struggles she encountered because of it. If you've ever thought something about yourself was odd or unusual, and you discovered someone else who had experienced it, perhaps you understand just how exhilarating it was for me to read this book. Empathy is incredibly powerful, and shared experiences are an amazing way to feel seen and heard. In her story, Cece finds a way to look at her hearing aids as a superpower, and this helps her establish a sense of self-acceptance. It has taken me a few decades and a little bit of therapy to shift my own perspective to the positive. In spite of, or perhaps because of my hearing loss, I've developed strong observational skills. And it turns out that how you assume others see you becomes somewhat of a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you drop the defensive attitude and wear a smile, it makes the world a much friendlier place. I still have sort of love-hate relationship with my hearing aids. I love that they give me the power to understand the world around me better, but I don't love being dependent on them for something external, especially something super expensive to replace if your dog chews on it. Yeah, not a chew toy. Now that my hearing aids have Bluetooth, it's a little easier to think of them as a superpower. I can turn on music streaming and give my life a soundtrack without finding headphones. When my dinner companion rambles on and won't stop talking, I can discreetly turn down the volume and make it easier to ignore them. Part of the beauty of the human experience is that struggle can make us stronger. In our easy button society, sometimes that gets lost. So if you have a challenge you're facing, before you wish it away completely, look for resources that can help you tackle it like a superhero. Thank you.
Loving our neighbors can actually be as easy as it sounds. It just takes an open heart, open hands, and often neglected open home. This is what Luke T and his family tried to do in their neighborhood using their learning experiences from around the world. Please welcome Luke with Loving Our Neighbors.
Hi, I'm Luke, and I was born and raised right here in Hutchinson, Kansas. I lived in the same house, the same school, the same friends, the same church, all throughout growing up right here in Hutchinson. I thought when I was 18, I'm going to shake the dust off this crummy little town. I'm going to see the world. And so I move and I go to college in Omaha. That's where I met my wife. It's where we bought, we had a child, we got a dog, we bought a house. We were living the American dream at that time. It wasn't until a pastor halfway around the world said, "Would you come and help us in Asia and work right here in Asia?" I said, "Nope." And next thing I know, I'm on the plane. I didn't know anything about Asia, but we decided to just jump in. It's quite a learning curve for a little family that we had to make. Who knew that Asia is different than central Kansas? But those 8 years really changed our life. We learned so many things. We watched and we immersed ourselves in the beautiful culture. Asians embraced us and they called us family. They taught us many things. First, we learned community. It didn't matter how small the space was. We crammed in because what was important to Asians is relationships. They wanted connections in community. Secondly, we learned how to care for others without programs. In Asia, there's very little government initiatives. There's very little nonprofits relative to their population size. So how do they care? They care by looking out for each other in community. You don't ignore neighbors' needs. You don't assume that someone else is going to bail them out. You have neighbors to watch out and to care in these relationships. Third, we saw that there's real joy without having stuff, without having possessions. It's about having relationships because their joy was in being with each other. It's all about relationships to them, and it's so beautiful. Speaking of relationships, by this time, our family had exploded to now 5 children. Unfortunately, in COVID 2020, it forced us back to the US. We had 24 hours to pack up our bags, to say goodbyes, and then find out where we're going to live next. That's us with all of our suitcases at the airport, our lives packed together, our family of 7 right there. And we decided, where else can we go on an Asian budget besides Hutchinson, Kansas? Because the big cities didn't take me in with my salary. So we said, where we're gonna live. We bought a house in the south end of town because that's what we could afford. This first house had no backyard, so we had to put our picnic table in the front yard, and that attracted neighbors. And then we decided to put a fire pit in the front yard, and that attracted even more friends and neighbors and children. And we started to build community right here on the south end of Hutchinson. We were able to bring a small dose of Asian community right here in Hutchinson. Those who walk by, we saw them not as a threat to us, but to be able to welcome in to our home. When the weather got cold, we had to move inside instead of being outside because we knew it was important for neighbors to have community. An open home gives us an opportunity to really meet our neighbors. Having an open home causes me to make friends who aren't like me, who don't look like me, who don't act like me, who don't sound like me, but I get to embrace them because they are my friends and my neighbors. Because we didn't have close family in South Asia, we had to learn to find that comfort and joy from neighbors and friends at times like Thanksgiving and Christmas. Well, now that we're back, our heart bleeds for those who don't have community on such special and significant days as Thanksgiving and Christmas. How could we close our doors to them and make the holidays about ourselves once again? We now usually host about 20 neighbors and sometimes acquaintances in our home to provide that sort of community for them. Well, a couple years later, a larger home opened up in our neighborhood, right across from HMS 7. I'm giving you all my address. It's right there. The big brick house right across from HMS 7. We moved again. It's a big home. It's a lot of opportunities to love our community and our neighborhood. We don't know what we're doing half the time with all the home repairs, but it's been a blessing to the community. We have rooms downstairs that are unused that we've had the privilege of caring for unhoused family in crisis and in transition. We've had the privilege of having a place for couch surfers to crash for a season just to get stable. We just want to keep our doors and our spaces open for community with those in needs on the south end of our town. Why is that so important? Well, for a few reasons. First, there are lonely people all over Hutchinson who need connections. They don't need handouts. They don't need stuff. They don't need your donations. They just need connections. They just need community. They need relationships with real people. Secondly, one of the hot topics in our time today is ACEs scores, adverse childhood effects. What do experts say counteracts these negative childhood effects? They're positive childhood experiences. It's supportive adults. Building local community is the way to do this effectively. And this is the goal of our home, to be a refuge and a support to teens and adults in our community. Imagine if Hutchinson had dozens, if it had hundreds of these kind of homes in our community. What would that do to the children, the teens, and those of our adults who had connected communities? As we open up our home, people are connected. We are able to build resiliency and talk through issues and struggles, and people begin to thrive, all because we did a simple act of opening up our home to others. Thank you.
Well, I think that was a pretty good full circle moment for the evening, right? Thank you, Luke, for ending us on a note and reminder about connection and how easy it can be. I think let's think of, Greg, don't hurt me for saying this, but like the library having an open door and that you all are welcome here tonight and every day that the library is open. I think the staff is very welcoming to you all. So if you have nowhere else to go, come here. But I hope you were inspired tonight by your friends, your neighbors, to go out there back into the cold night and love your community, love each other even more. I hope you will come back in July when we do this again. And if you have an idea for someone who should share their story at Talk20 Hutch, or if you want to share your story, you can let us know through our Facebook page or our website. We're always taking ideas. So before we part tonight, let's give one more round of applause to all of our presenters. Thank you all for celebrating 10 years of this with us. And again, if you are welcome to join us at Sandhills Brewing if you want to continue the conversations. And until July, keep connecting. Thank you.